My family secretly set a place for my cheating ex-wife at Thanksgiving, claiming they were neutral. So a year later, I crashed their dinner, exposed a devastating secret, and let foreclosure do the rest. My parents secretly set a place for my cheating ex-wife at our family Thanksgiving table, claiming they needed to stay neutral in our divorce. I stood there for 10 agonizing seconds, turned around, and walked out of their lives. A year later, I found out they invited not just her, but the man she cheated with, my former best friend. So, I crashed their holiday dinner with my new girlfriend, dropped a nuclear secret that shattered their toxic little arrangement, and walked away forever. My name is Marcus. I'm 35 now, but a couple of years ago, I was the guy whose life looked like a targeted ad for middle-class perfection. I am a lead commercial architect. I had a beautiful wife, a best friend I'd known since middle school, and parents who hosted massive, chaotic Sunday dinners that I genuinely looked forward to. I had the 4-bedroom house with the wraparound porch, the perfectly manicured lawn, and the exact life I had mapped out since I was a teenager. Turns out, the entire foundation was built on sand, and I was the only idiot who didn't realize the house was sinking. Let me back up to the beginning of the end. I married my wife, Elena, when we were both 28. We had been inseparable since our senior year of college. Elena was a magnet. She had this uncanny ability to make anyone she spoke to feel like they were the only person in the room. She remembered my colleagues' birthdays, left incredibly detailed, funny sticky notes on my drafting board, and never complained when I had to work late to meet a deadline. I thought she was my soulmate. I would have bet my life, my career, and my soul on her loyalty. Then, there was Julian. Julian Vance had been my best friend since the 8th grade. We bonded after he stepped in to help me fight off a bully who was trying to steal my drafting supplies. From that day on, we were brothers. We went to the same college, shared a miserable, cramped dorm room, and survived on ramen and cheap beer. When I needed emergency dental surgery at 21 and couldn't afford it, Julian drained his savings to lend me $4,500. He was the best man at my wedding. He gave a speech that had my stoic father wiping his eyes. I trusted Julian with my life. Elena and Julian got along flawlessly. I always thought I was the luckiest guy in the world because my wife and my best friend actually liked each other. There were no awkward tensions, no competing for my time. We did weekend cabin trips, hosted game nights, and went to concerts together. Elena would text Julian to plan surprise parties for me. Julian would ask Elena for advice on his messy dating life. It was so seamless, so incredibly comfortable, that I never once thought to look for cracks in the foundation. When you trust people completely, your brain doesn't bother installing a security system. I found out on a rainy Thursday afternoon in late September. I had just finished the blueprints for a major commercial plaza 3 days ahead of schedule. I decided to take the rest of the afternoon off, surprise Elena, and celebrate. I stopped at this high-end artisanal taco place she was obsessed with, bought a ridiculous amount of food, and drove home with a massive smile on my face. I heard the noises the second I unlocked the front door. I won't burn the details into your brain, mostly because my own brain has mercifully blurred the edges of that memory to protect my sanity. But I will tell you this, there is a very specific, horrifying acoustic shift that happens in your home when two people are in your master bedroom at 2:30 p.m. on a Thursday. I stood at the bottom of the oak staircase I had refinished with my own 2 hands, holding 2 bags of lukewarm gourmet tacos, and felt my entire reality disintegrate in the span of 5 seconds. You know that terrifying jolt when you lean too far back in a chair and realize you're going to fall. Imagine that sensation, but it lasts for an eternity, and the floor you're falling toward is covered in glass. I didn't yell, I didn't throw the food. I walked up the stairs like a ghost, pushed the bedroom door open, and just stood there. Elena saw me first. All the color drained from her face, leaving her looking like a terrified corpse. Her expression cycled through shock, horror, and the pathetic panic of a cornered animal. Julian wouldn't even make eye contact. He scrambled backward, sitting on the edge of the custom bed frame I had built, staring at the hardwood floor like it held the secrets to the universe. How long? I asked. My voice didn't even sound like my own. It was completely hollow. Marcus, please, oh my God, it's not what you think, Elena babbled, tears instantly streaming down her face. It is truly the most insulting cliché in the English language. Julian finally looked up, his face pale. Man, I am so sorry. How long? I repeated, louder this time. 6 months, Elena whispered, choking on a sob. 6 months. Half a year of game nights, shared dinners, and Julian looking me in the eye while drinking my beer, knowing exactly what he was doing with my wife when I wasn't around. I carefully set the bags of tacos on the mahogany dresser. To this day, I don't know why I did that. I think my brain was just desperate to complete a normal task. I turned around, walked down the stairs, got into my car, and drove to a deserted parking lot behind a strip mall. I sat there in the pouring rain for 4 hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the windshield wipers' rhythmic sweeping, feeling like I had died and nobody had bothered to tell me. The next month was an absolute nightmare. Elena called relentlessly. She texted me essays about how it was a stupid mistake, and how Julian meant nothing to her. She even showed up at my architectural firm, causing a massive scene in the lobby until security had to gently escort her out. I packed my essentials, moved out of my beautiful home, and rented a depressing, sterile studio apartment that smelled permanently like bleach and old takeout. My divorce lawyer, a ruthless bulldog of a woman named Brenda, told me it would be a clean break since we had no kids, just the house, the assets, and the absolute destruction of my mental health. This is the part of the story where you would expect my family to rally around me. My parents, Arthur and Helen, and my older sister, Sarah, the people who were supposed to be my unconditional safety net. At first, they played the part. My mom called me crying, saying I deserved so much better. My dad took me out for a beer, clapped me on the shoulder, and told me I'd bounce back. Sarah sent me blistering text messages calling Elena every name in the book. It felt supportive. It felt like I wasn't entirely alone in the world. But within a few weeks, the atmosphere started to subtly shift. It was like a slow leak in a tire, you don't notice it until you're completely flat. My mom started dropping little comments. I saw Elena at the grocery store today, Marcus. She looks absolutely awful. She's really struggling with the guilt. Sarah casually mentioned that Elena had called her in tears, and they ended up talking for an hour. She's a mess, Marcus. I know she ruined everything, but I do feel a tiny bit bad for her. My dad just went completely silent whenever I brought up the divorce proceedings. It wasn't his usual stoic silence. It was a heavy, judgmental silence. The kind that screams, I have an opinion, but I don't want to start a fight. I ignored the red flags. I was too busy drowning in my own misery to analyze my family's bizarre sympathy for the woman who destroyed my life. I just wanted to get to Thanksgiving. In my family, Thanksgiving was practically a religious event. My mom spent weeks preparing. It was the one day a year where the entire extended family gathered, ate incredible food, and pretended the world was perfect. I desperately needed that normalcy. I needed to sit at that massive dining table and feel like I belonged somewhere. 2 days before Thanksgiving, Sarah called me. Hey. So, you're still coming on Thursday, right? Her voice was tight, anxious. It sounded less like an invitation and more like a warning. I told her of course I was coming. Thursday arrived. I put on a nice sweater, trying to hide the fact that I had lost 12 pounds from the stress diet of frozen pizzas and black coffee. I drove the 45 minutes to Oak Ridge, looking forward to my mom's famous pecan pie and the comforting chaos of my relatives. I pulled up to the house at 1 p.m. The driveway was packed with my aunts and uncles' cars. And then, parked right next to my mom's SUV, was a familiar blue sedan. Elena's car. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it was going to crack them. And a linen napkin folded into a perfect, intricate swan, the exact way my mom always set the table for honored guests. The room went dead silent the moment they saw me. Elena's laugh died in her throat. She looked down at her lap. My Aunt Karen suddenly became very interested in the tablecloth. My mom walked out of the kitchen carrying a tray of appetizers. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw me. She didn't look surprised. She looked braced for impact. Marcus, honey, come in. Let me take your coat, she said, her voice trembling slightly. What is she doing here? I asked. My voice was eerily calm. My mom took a deep breath, looked around the room at our silent relatives, and delivered the sentence that permanently altered the trajectory of my life. Marcus, we talked about this as a family. We decided we need to stay neutral. Elena is going through a terrible time right now, and she has been a part of this family for almost a decade. We can't just throw her out into the cold on a holiday. We have to stay neutral. I didn't speak. I just stood there and counted the seconds in my head. 1, 2, 3. Every single pair of eyes in that room was glued to me. My dad was staring at the floor. Sarah was biting her lip, looking incredibly guilty. My uncles were shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Elena was looking at me with these giant, pathetic, pleading eyes, silently begging me to just sit down and accept the humiliation. 8, 9, 10 seconds. That is exactly how long it took for my entire family to show me that their comfort, their desperate need to avoid conflict, was infinitely more important than my pain. They hadn't just let me down, they had watched me get stabbed in the back, and then invited the person holding the knife to dinner. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table. I just looked at my mother, looked at my father, and finally looked at Elena. Enjoy the turkey, I said softly. I turned around, walked out the front door, got into my car, and drove away. By the time I hit the highway, my phone was exploding. Missed calls from mom. Text from Sarah saying, please come back, we just want peace. A single text from my dad. Son, don't overreact, come inside. I turned my phone off, drove to a 24-hour diner on the edge of town, and ordered a sad, dry club sandwich. The waitress, an older woman named Betty, took one look at my face and brought me a massive slice of cherry pie on the house. She didn't ask questions, She just poured me coffee and left me alone. I sat in that diner for 4 hours, and in that cheap vinyl booth, a cold, hard realization settled over me like armor. I was done, not with life, I was done with them. I was done with people who chose neutrality over loyalty. Update 1. The next few months were the darkest period of my entire existence. I was a ghost haunting my own life. The divorce was finalized in February. Elena didn't fight for the house or the savings. Brenda absolutely destroyed her in mediation. I sold our beautiful house, split the equity, and used my half to upgrade to a modern, minimalist loft downtown. It was beautiful, but it felt incredibly empty. My family relentlessly tried to contact me. My mom sent long, tear-stained letters about how much she missed me and how I was tearing the family apart over pride. Sarah kept texting me, trying to justify their actions under the guise of Christian grace. My dad left voicemails telling me to be the bigger man. I blocked their numbers, returned the letters unopened, and threw myself entirely into my work. I was surviving on caffeine and sheer spite. I lost more weight. I looked like hell. That's when a colleague of mine, a senior structural engineer named Dave, noticed I was spiraling. Dave was a quiet guy, a former Marine who didn't tolerate nonsense. One day, he casually dropped a massive, homemade roast beef sandwich on my desk. "You look like a stiff breeze would snap you in half," Dave grunted. "Eat. And tomorrow night, you're coming with me to the church basement." I tried to decline, but Dave didn't take no for an answer. He dragged me to a men's support group that met every Wednesday night. I wasn't religious, and the idea of sitting in a circle sharing my feelings made me want to jump into traffic, but I went. There were about 15 guys there, ranging from 20-somethings dealing with addiction to older men dealing with the loss of their spouses. The group was led by a retired therapist named Greg. For the first 3 weeks, I didn't say a word. I just drank the terrible church coffee and listened. But hearing other men talk about their absolute rock-bottom moments made me realize I wasn't uniquely cursed. I was just human. On the 4th week, I finally cracked. I told them everything. I told them about Elena and Julian. I told them about the Thanksgiving dinner. I told them about my mother folding the napkin into a swan for the woman who destroyed me, and claiming they had to stay neutral. An older guy named Walter, a retired iron worker who rarely spoke, leaned forward in his metal folding chair. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Son, let me tell you something about neutrality. Neutrality is a position, and it ain't yours. When someone claims to be neutral between the victim and the abuser, they have already chosen the abuser's side, they just don't have the spine to admit it." That single sentence hit me like a freight train. It validated every ounce of anger I had been suppressing. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. My family had betrayed me, plain and simple. From that night on, my entire mindset shifted. I stopped mourning the family I thought I had, and started accepting the reality of the family I actually had. I started hitting the gym at 5 a.m. every single day. I put the 12 pounds back on, this time in muscle. I threw myself into a massive, multi-million-dollar riverfront redevelopment project my firm had just secured. Through that project, I met Leo. Leo was the lead landscape architect for the city. He was exactly my age, sharp, hilarious, and had just gone through a brutal divorce of his own. His wife left him for her personal trainer. We bonded instantly over our shared trauma and our absolute obsession with our work. Leo became the best friend Julian never actually was. Leo didn't need anything from me, he just showed up. By the summer, my career was exploding. The riverfront project was a massive success, and I was promoted to senior partner at my firm. I was making more money than I ever thought possible, but more importantly, I was genuinely happy. That's also when I met Maya. Maya was the city planner assigned to the riverfront project. She was brilliant, fiercely independent, and possessed a razor-sharp wit that immediately captivated me. We started out as professional adversaries, arguing over zoning permits, which evolved into grabbing coffee, which evolved into 4-hour dinners where we talked about everything and nothing. I told Maya about my past on our 3rd date. I laid it all out: the cheating, the Thanksgiving betrayal, the estrangement. Maya didn't offer empty platitudes. She just looked at me and said, "Loyalty isn't a buffet, Marcus. You don't get to pick and choose when you apply it. You survived a house fire, and you're better off without the people who handed the arsonists the matches." I fell in love with her right then and there. By October, almost a full year after the Thanksgiving incident, I was a completely different man. I was strong, successful, deeply in love with Maya, and finally at peace. And then, my cousin Chloe reached out. Chloe was the only relative who had looked ashamed at that Thanksgiving table. She sent me a message on LinkedIn, begging for 10 minutes of my time. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near my office. Chloe looked nervous when she sat down. "Marcus, I have no right to bother you, but you need to know what's happening." I couldn't keep my mouth shut anymore. I sipped my black coffee. "What's going on, Chloe?" "Elena and Julian are officially together," she blurted out. "They went public about a month after your divorce was finalized. But that's not the worst part." Chloe took a shaky breath. "Your parents?" Chloe took up. Your parents have been having Sunday dinners with them, both of them. Sarah and her husband go too. They've all welcomed Julian back into the fold. Like nothing happened. My stomach tightened, but I kept my face completely blank. Okay. That's their choice. Marcus, you don't understand, Chloe whispered, leaning in. They knew. Your mom and Sarah knew about the affair 2 months before you caught them. Elena confessed to Sarah because she felt guilty, and Sarah told your mom. They kept it a secret because they didn't want to destroy the family dynamic right before the holidays. The coffee shop around me seemed to fade away. They knew. My own mother and sister knew my wife was sleeping with my best friend, and they smiled in my face, ate my food, and watched me live a lie. Why are you telling me this now, Chloe? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Because, Chloe swallowed hard, Aunt Helen is hosting Thanksgiving again next month, and she invited both of them. Elena and Julian are coming as a couple. And Aunt Helen is telling the rest of the extended family that you're still throwing a tantrum and refusing to attend. I couldn't let them rewrite history, Marcus, I'm so sorry. Chloe left shortly after. I sat in that coffee shop for an hour, formulating a plan. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was surgically precise. I called Leo and told him everything. So, what's the play? Leo asked. Do we slash their tires? Because I know a guy. No, I said, a cold smile spreading across my face. I'm going to Thanksgiving. And I'm going to burn their little fantasy world to the ground. Update 2. The next morning, I unblocked my sister's number and called her. She picked up on the first ring, her voice trembling with shock. Marcus? Oh my God, is it really you? Hi Sarah, I said smoothly. I've been doing a lot of thinking. I want to come to Thanksgiving this year. I want to clear the air. 2. Sarah practically burst into tears. Yes. Oh, Marcus, Mom is going to be so happy. We've missed you so much. I have to tell you though. Elena is going to be there. And Julian. They're together now. Mom just wants everyone to be mature and heal. I know, I said, I'm completely fine with it. In fact, I'm bringing my new girlfriend, Maya. We'll see you at 1 p.m. I hung up before she could say another word. I spent the next 3 weeks preparing, but I didn't just prepare a speech. I did some digging. My architectural firm had recently acquired the commercial property management rights for a massive sector of the city. I asked my legal team to run a check on the commercial leases in that sector. Guess whose failing custom auto body shop was leasing a garage on one of our newly acquired lots? Julian Vance. And guess whose lease was up for renewal on December 1st? I also had Leo do some digging through his own social circles. Julian had always been a sloppy guy, and old habits die hard. It took Leo exactly 4 days to find out that Julian wasn't just failing at business, he was failing at his new toxic relationship. Julian had been actively sleeping with a 22-year-old bartender named Lexi for the past 3 months. Leo got the receipts, screenshots of texts, Venmo transactions for late-night drinks, the works. I printed everything out, placed it in a sleek leather folder, and waited for Thursday. Thanksgiving Day arrived. Maya looked absolutely breathtaking in a burgundy dress. She held my hand in the car as we drove to Oak Ridge. Whatever happens in there, Maya said, her eyes fierce, we walk out together. You don't owe them a damn thing. I know, I said. Today isn't about saving them. It's about burying them. We pulled into the driveway at exactly 1:15 p.m. Julian's obnoxious lifted truck was parked right out front. I grabbed the leather folder, took Maya's hand, and walked through the front door without knocking. The house was packed. The smell of turkey and tension was thick in the air. We walked straight into the dining room. The entire family was already seated. My mom was at the head of the table, beaming. But when she saw me walk in, tall, composed, and holding the hand of a gorgeous woman who exuded absolute confidence, her smile faltered. Then, I looked at the table. Sitting right next to each other, holding hands, were Elena and Julian. Julian looked smug. Elena looked incredibly nervous but trying to put on a brave face. Marcus, my mom gasped, standing up. You came. And this must be Maya. We are so thrilled you're here. Let me get 2 more chairs. Don't bother, Helen, I said, projecting my voice so it echoed off the walls. The entire room went dead silent. Utterly paralyzed. We aren't staying for dinner. I just came to drop off a few things and clarify the record. My dad stood up, his face reddening. Son, don't do this. We are trying to be a family. We are moving forward. You don't have a family, Arthur, I snapped, staring him down until he flinched. You have a pathetic little cult of conflict avoidance, but we'll get to you in a minute. I turned my attention to Sarah, who was shrinking into her chair. Sarah, my loving sister, the one who preached to me about grace and forgiveness. Tell me, did you exercise grace when Elena confessed her affair to you 2 months before I found out? Did you feel a lot of grace when you and Mom decided to keep it a secret so you wouldn't ruin the holiday vibe? Gasps erupted around the table. My uncles looked at my mom and sister in absolute horror. Chloe gave me a tiny, imperceptible nod. Marcus, please. My mom cried, tears spilling over. We didn't know how to tell you. We just wanted to wait until after the holidays. We didn't want you to be alone. So you let me sleep next to a woman who was actively betraying me with my best friend? I said, my voice dropping to a lethal calm. That isn't love, Mom, that is cowardice. You chose your own comfort over your son's reality. I turned to Julian. He tried to puff out his chest, trying to look intimidating. He just looked pathetic. Julian, I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. My brother. The man who sat at my table, drank my beer, and slept with my wife. You look like you're doing well. How's the auto shop? Julian narrowed his eyes. It's fine, man, look, if you're just here to throw a tantrum. I tossed the leather folder directly onto Elena's dinner plate. It landed with a heavy smack, right on top of her perfectly folded napkin. You might want to check your mail tomorrow, Julian, I said casually. My firm, Vanguard Architecture, just bought the commercial lot your shop sits on, and as the senior partner overseeing the redevelopment, I personally denied your lease renewal. You have 30 days to vacate the premises before we bulldoze it for a parking structure. Julian's face went completely ashen. The smugness vanished, replaced by sheer panic. You can't do that. That's my livelihood. I just did, I said, but don't worry, Elena, I'm sure Julian will have plenty of free time to spend with you now, when he isn't spending it with Lexi, the 22-year-old bartender from the Rusty Anchor. Elena whipped her head around to look at me, her eyes wide with shock. What? Open the folder, Elena. Maya spoke up for the first time, her voice smooth as silk but sharp as a scalpel. It's all in there. Texts, Venmo receipts, hotel bookings. He's been sleeping with her for 3 months. Enjoy your prize. Elena scrambled to open the folder. She pulled out the printed screenshots. Her hands shook violently. She looked at Julian, who was stammering, completely incapable of forming a sentence. Julian? Elena shrieked, her voice shattering the quiet of the dining room. Is this true? Are you kidding me? Babe, wait, let me explain, it's not what it looks like. Julian panicked, using the exact same line Elena had used on me a year prior. Poetic justice is a beautiful thing. The dining room erupted into absolute chaos. Elena threw her wine glass at Julian, shattering it against the wall. My dad was yelling. My mom was sobbing hysterically, clutching her chest. Sarah was burying her face in her hands. I stood there for a moment, watching the perfect, neutral family dynamic burn to ashes. I felt absolutely nothing for them. No anger. No sadness. Just immense, overwhelming relief. I looked at my parents one last time. You wanted neutrality, you wanted to keep the peace by inviting snakes to the table. Well, here is your peace. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. I took Maya's hand, and we walked out. We didn't look back. We got into the car, and as I started the engine, Maya leaned over and kissed me deeply. God, you are magnificent, she whispered. We drove back to the city, ordered Chinese takeout, and ate it on the floor of my loft with my new golden retriever puppy, Atlas. It was the greatest Thanksgiving of my entire life. That was 6 months ago. The fallout was apocalyptic. Elena dumped Julian on the spot and tried to call me a week later, begging for a second chance, claiming she realized her mistake. I forwarded her voicemail to Lexi, the bartender, just for fun, and blocked Elena permanently. Julian's auto shop was evicted. The building was demolished last Tuesday. Last I heard, he's working at a quick lube place 2 towns over and living in a cheap motel. My parents and Sarah have tried desperately to contact me, sending gifts, letters, and tearful voicemails begging for forgiveness. My dad even showed up at my office lobby, but I had security turn him away. They finally realized that by trying to keep everyone, they lost the only son they had. I'm 35, I'm marrying Maya next spring, and I've never been happier. If your family ever demands that you stay neutral in the face of your own destruction, walk away, build your own table, and never, ever look back. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel out and allows us to bring you even more awesome stories. Thank you so much for watching.